Well, hello folks, and welcome to episode 237 of Retropower and Cut. And we start with the Geneva E-Type. There's quite a lot been going on here. I'm going to let the CAD guys talk about some of it, because some of it is very relevant to them, as you can see here. But some of the jeopardy has been in the metal, which is behind these. These are currently inserted into an aperture that's been cut in the very new and expensive and handmade rear end, custom made rear end on this E-Type, as you will know from long time ago. It was all designed on CAD, book made, panels all formed by Andy and his helpers at Vintage Machines, and we have all that on here now. Obviously you'll have seen all that in the past, and the final stages are the lights. These are a prototype. That's a clear PETG 3D print with internal reinforcement, hence why it looks quite opaque. However, we are in discussions with a company who will be making the final lights for this, the final lenses now. But obviously the holes needed cutting in the body, and that's a bit of jeopardy that's been passed down the line a little way, but it's finally got sorted first thing this morning. Luke had done the CAD work required to make a template to mark out the cutouts, and yep, this morning Matt's got on and done that. I imagine Jamie will have a little bit of footage.
Actually, no, he cut it when I wasn't here deliberately to avoid the peril.
I'm told Jamie done that because we didn't want the peril on camera. Right, I will explain. Doing a cutout like that, which is in behind this, I'm not going to pull the light out to try and show you, but it's a very precise cut needed on a compound curved surface like that. It sounds old school, but short of a 5-axis laser cutter to do it, the answer is tin snips, and Matt has basically scribed out the aperture completely, marked all the corners, drilled all the corners so that he can get the end of his tin snips in, and then very carefully tin snip to the line all the way around. And that's the way to do that sort of job, because you can cut absolutely exactly to a line with no need to sand it. You know, it'll be a very light sand by hand to finish it off, but there's no sanding and dressing to a line which tends to round all the edges off and make your line go wavy. So it's literally just tin snipped exactly around the line on both of those, and those apertures are done. Prior to that, Matt was working on a little piece inside the boot where you will recall I've mentioned the fuel tank previously on this. Been a couple of revisions in that none of the ways I wanted to do the fuel tank would actually physically fit in the space we've got and keep enough capacity for the tank. It was all sort of within 5 mil, but the wrong side of within 5 mil. Every time, whichever way I tried to do it, it didn't fit. So what we're actually going to do is gravity feed a fuel surge tank, which needed a bit of metal work to fit in the right place in the boot. It'll be coming from Radium Engineering. They make a very nice fuel surge tank, which will be feeding a separate fuel pressure regulator. We were hoping to incorporate the fuel pressure regulator into the pump enclosure, which is a fairly commonly done thing, and then run a deadhead fuel line to the front, just run a single fuel line to the front of the car. But that can't actually happen, it won't fit. So we're running a gravity-fed surge tank with an internal pump inside it, and then running an external regulator at the front of the car now is the final plan on that. So we've got to put the apertures in for the fuel pipes to exit the boot area, but Matt's now put the mounting in for the fuel surge tank stroke pump holder, which is now in place. And end of last week I did some flow tests to check what the fuel flow was through the feed pipes to that, to check that we would be able to gravity feed fuel fast enough. So what I did is I just made a little rig using an old dry sump tank with a very minimal amount of fuel in it, basically the least I could get in and still have enough to flow 100 cc's of fuel out of that tank. I then gravity fed that through various fittings and combinations of fittings and bits of line whilst timing it to see what rates a nearly empty fuel tank will gravity feed at through AN8 and AN6 elbows and sections of fuel pipe connecting them. because we know that, let's say, we made a few assumptions and we've said just a little bit more than 500 horsepower. So we said, let's say the engine makes 525 horsepower. At that, the engine's going to require something in the order of 43, I think, cc's of fuel per second. So we wanted to make sure that we got some comfort margin on that. And yes, with the combination of fittings that we've got here, we can gravity flow over 50 cc's a second with almost zero head of fuel on there. So that's all good. So that's where we're at on metalwork, with a little elaboration on fuel flows. Further to that, we've done some work at the front of the car, or correction, mainly George has been doing some work at the front of the car, finalising the HVAC. So getting that fit into the car. I'll let him elaborate on that, but basically he's now got that to fit in the footwell, and he's simplified how it fits in the footwell to the point where it's a lot easier to fit than it was going to be. But I'll let him explain that work better than I'm going to try and explain it now. And then finally on this, we'll pick up a bit of body shop this week actually. Gaz has been doing some work getting the hard top to fit in a more pleasant fashion. The hard top, I'll be open to suggestions from viewers. The hard top we have for this car is fiberglass. I don't know if the original Jaguar ones were fiberglass or not, but we have this one and it fits. And it's easy to modify, so we're going to stick with it. But the arrangement for holding it on was basically what looked like some picture hooks that you'd hang things on your wall with at home. And it looked appalling. So we're trying to come up with a nicer way of doing that. And we've looked at it and figured it makes sense to use the same catches that the soft top uses to hold closed. And we can get another set of those, and then the hard top and soft top will both fit with the same type of catches. But in order to do that, we need to add some reinforcement into the hard top. I mean, it needed reinforcing anyway. I would say that if you tried to drive at any speed with the hard top fitted, it would probably just rip the attachment hooks off with the way it was, because they're into such thin fiberglass. And you know, flappy sections of fiberglass in single shear at that, so it would just break them off. So what we've done is, or what Gaz has done is added some extra matting and resin into the corners of the roof and the centre of the roof above the screen, where the loads will be fed into the roof. And then we're going to make some stainless steel plates that we can bond on, and those stainless steel plates will carry a small stainless steel block which will profile to fit, so that we can screw the soft top catch mechanisms onto those blocks, and they will then be bonded into the roof, and then we can get the screws out to remove those catches, just leaving a mounting block basically bonded into the corners and centre of the forward edge of the hard top, which would be a much nicer way of attaching the hard top. It's going to involve a bit of fettling of little blocks of steel to fit, a bit of detail work, but that's not a problem. We'll do that, and then that'll all be quite a nice, neat little setup for holding the hard top on. I think at that point, I'm going to stop talking about that. I'm going to talk about this next, actually. I'm going to talk about the scimitar next, and have a gulp of this. So scimitar, I've done some, what outwardly would be fairly trivial progress on what a car manufacturer would call building a seating book. But we have the owners of this car visiting tomorrow, and through various sits in the car and checks and working out, we've evaluated the tight areas, the areas that might need tweaking. We talked a bit about those last week. To that end, I've got one of the doors down and stripped out the internals of the door and kind of assessed the capacity for the door to have a bit of a sculpted cavity to clear your arm. And there's plenty of capacity to be able to do that. It'll actually look really neat, really work well, and does have room in exactly the right places to make it comfortable. So that's really a good start. But again, we need the customers' buy into that and decision on whether they think that's a good idea. I fitted the gear lever. And I've also created a temporary steering column rig in there, and made a temporary steering column up with an appropriate diameter wheel that's adjustable for height and in and out as a temporary column, just so that the customers can sit in, adjust the seat, adjust the steering wheel, and get the ideal seating position. There's 3 of them, so they're all going to try it. And at that point, I can measure each of the positions, and then we can basically take an average, I think. Well, or they can draw straws or something as to who's, because we're not going to have the column adjustable in this car. I don't want to have the column adjustable. Adjustable columns tend to be very heavy, complex, and not really the ethos of this type of car. We're going to have this seat adjustable, and we are going to have an adjustable pedal box, but the steering is going to be the fixed point in all of that. So they can draw straws about that tomorrow. But we'll do, basically we're going to have a seating session tomorrow. The door is only literally pushed into the aperture because the hinges are in appalling condition and the hinge pillar is pretty much non-existent. So, but at the moment that's just resting in the aperture such that we can actually sit in and work out where everything's going to work. But that's looking really good actually. Everything's close on everything else. However, we keep having to remind ourselves it's a really small car, a surprisingly small car. As I say, sill to sill width, similar to a Morris Minor. So very small car. So yeah, happy with where we're at on that. We'll see how tomorrow goes, and hopefully we'll have a route forward for the tweaks we need to do and the alterations, and we can start the design of all the internal parts for the composite work that's going to be involved in that. So that's where we're at on that. Moving on to Saab. Bobby has been working on the final stint of the A-pillars. As you can see here, he's just been DAing this up following his fabrication. All of the punched holes, which will be for plug welds, all over that. There's a lot of plug welds going to be involved. And he's finished the inner A-pillar section, finished off the repairs at the top. All of this is now ready to weld. He's got the the outer section for the A-post both sides finished. So all of that is now ready to weld in. He's literally on the stages now of coating all the inside. I think he was just DAing this off a few minutes ago. And I think the next phase then is going to be coating all of the inside, putting all the seam sealer in there, and then getting these welded on. So realistically, by end of play tomorrow, I think he's going to be pretty much at the stage of these being welded on and finally able to look back on door pillars and hinges, at least from the car half. Obviously we've still got to do some work on the door half, but at least the car half is buttoned up. At that point you can get moved on to the scuttle and carry on with that. Sorry, no, move on to these reinforcer sections, because there's two reinforcers that basically sit between there and here, so we can move on to those and then move on to the scuttle and put some of this behind him then basically, and get on to some different bits of fabrication to think about, and something a fresh thing to look at, because once you've stared at a piece like this for as long as Bobby has, it starts to grind you down a bit. I can sort of see it's getting on top of him a bit now. He needs to move on to something else, but equally he won't let go of this till it's done. So that's where Bobby's at on that. We're making good progress. It's just it's been a very, very tricky. To be honest, overall, that section of this car has probably been one of the biggest technical challenges we've had since we set up Retropower. Just to put it in perspective, it might just look like a bit of metal, but it's fought at every single possible part of the job from the start to nearly the finish. It's been difficult at every stage, so he's done an incredibly good job of that, and very proud of very proud of Bobby's work on that, because I think I'd have to say I think I'd have struggled myself on that. Moving on from that, we're going to go round to the E9 and have another little gulp of drink. Good progress on this. Stu's basically got this side all buttoned up now. He was getting there last week. That's now all finished and done. Martin's finished off the bits he was working on, done all the repairs that he can do really now. And the stage we're at now on this is getting it affixed to the jig. I don't know if we'd mentioned before, we looked at using the E46 front suspension on this. It's too wide, is the blunt, and is the long and short of it. We looked at E36. It's not really suitable either. The width still isn't correct. And also we've got a slight concern over the spindle height. So we've then looked at E30, which fits nicely. The subframe mounting is horizontal in the E30 rather than angled in the E36, which lets us fit the subframe in a slightly different position, which actually then gives us a bit of a benefit in terms of spindle height. As you can see here, now these are E30 fixtures in a stock E30 position, and how they fit against the chassis rail is pretty beneficial. It all lines up really nicely, everything's going to work. And the other benefit for our customer of this car is that we already have the E30 fixtures, so we don't need to make new ones, we already have them. So we can utilise those fixtures to get everything set up in the front of this car, and that's quite a good. That's another fairly major help on doing this work. But yeah, Stu's basically got the car now. Now the sills are built, so we've got some structural strength there. he has now dropped the car back onto the sill clamps, removed the fixtures that he had, slid the car forward to meet the position for the E30 mounts, and then he's going to adjust the rear mounts that he did for the E28 rear beam that we're using on this E9. He's going to adjust the rear beam mount fixtures so that they fit accurately into the shell, again because the shell's moved. And then I think we'll have a full set of fixtures under there for getting all the suspension grafted in. We're waiting for an E30 cross member for the front, and if anybody's watching, we're in need of a pair of E30 M3 steering arms, which, to those who are only vaguely familiar with them, are a forging that bolts to the bottom of the strut on an E30 M3. It's only on the M3, not the normal M3. Sorry, not the normal E30, only on the M3. It bolts to the bottom of the strut casing and holds the lower ball joint and pivot point and and forms the steering arm. It's a single forging each side, but as I say, they're unique to E30 M3. You can't get them new anymore, and they seem to be quite hard to get second hand. Now we're on the brink of just getting some machined, but if anybody knows of any, just let us know. Otherwise we'll scan some that we already have here that are for another project, and then get some machined. So that's where we're going with that. As I say, the metalwork progress is coming along really nicely. I'm sure Jamie's got loads of footage, lots of spot welding, lots of assembly, lots of coating, and lots of structure now in place where once there was none. So yeah, it's looking vastly improved. I'm sure you can see Stu's been doing some rather nice work on this. And yeah, all coming along really well. And then I think it's going to be time to have a quick look at the Aston Martin. Now I'm just going to check that, no, I have got his name correct. Matt has parked his box in the way. I was hoping to catch in fact, let's do a cut there. Right, well, we've done a little cut there because I needed to move Matt's toolbox out of the way, because this morning you'll notice that our Select jig has some Select graphics on it, which is very nice. Now, we spoke to Select about these, but they weren't overly proactive in their response. However, one of our customers, by the name of Tony Venables, thank you very much, Tony, was extremely proactive, and in the post day before yesterday, I received some rather nice Select graphics that he just made at home for us. So thank you very much, Tony Venables. He used his little vinyl cutter at home, found some images and worked out roughly what scale they were supposed to be at, and cut it for us and sent it to us. So we've now got graphics all round on that, and it looks very, very nice. And yeah, all looking the part for building a car on now. So thank you very much indeed, Tony Venables. That is a lovely gesture. Thank you very much indeed. In terms of progress on this, as you can see, quite a lot. It is now, the chassis is now mounted where it shouldn't need to be moved on the Select jig. We've put the beams on, we've put a couple of lengths of channel section across, 100 by 50 channel across, just to give us a bit of a height lift and make sure that we've got a nice stable platform. Matt's finished all of the welding on the chassis, tail end of last week. All of the fabrication that can be done up to this point. He's then got that mounted on there and tacked in place, solidly tacked in place onto those channel sections after checking that it's exactly on centre line, exactly level, exactly straight. So now the chassis can stay there, doesn't need to move, can stay attached to the jig now, and we know that's all datumed, everything's accurate. We've got a stable platform to work from. He's then moved on to the body and cut some more bits off the body that were in the way, that we knew we were going to have to remove. Some of the lower structure, he's got that removed and cleaned up. And then we've dropped the body on, checked it for level, which it is amazingly. It's actually extremely close to level, which I didn't expect, because I thought that there was liable to be some twist in that car. But it's within 2 millimeters in terms of between the bases of the pillars where they sit flat onto the chassis, was within 2 millimeters. So we're pretty happy with that. We've got to do some more measurements, make sure all the apertures are kind of level to the chassis, and that, but a preliminary run round with a tape measure suggests that they are. So yeah, that's all looking really good. In fact, I've got a little aside to do here, because something that is a minor thing, and people ask us a lot about what tools we're using for this, that and the other. And one thing that's really important in this workshop, and this will sound like a sponsorship deal, and it's not, I can assure you, it's just that we like using them, is a decent tape measure. And a lot of the time when building something like that chassis, you need to measure between 2 points, and a conventional tape measure is rubbish for doing that. You can't actually measure between 2 points accurately using a tape measure. However, with one of these, which is a Hultafors Talmeter type tape measure, which is a 3 metre one, they do other lengths as well, but it's a 3 metre one. These are the best tool in this sort of environment for measuring. It's a normal tape measure, it does tape measure type things, you do that and it works, but if you do that, it has a section that comes out of the back which offsets all of its measurements by exactly 100 millimetres. So then when you want to measure between points, you can run that up to the back, that to the front, and you know it's exactly right. Now I know some measures have an offset to a plastic bit on the back, but it's never exactly square, and it's very hard to measure to accurately. With this, you know it's exactly 100 millimetres, and then there's even a little reminder printed on the scale saying the measurement if you use the back extension. The other points on this are that there is, when I find it, at the 100 mil mark, there's a pinhole in the measure, so you can put a scribe through that and use it as a trammel. And then this point here on the tape measure, just there, is a scribing point. There's a hardened scribing point there. So if you put a pin or scribe into a centre punch mark at the 100 mil mark, you can then use that as a trammel for scribing circles out. So if you're the person that is doing old school cone layouts or square to rounds, not using CAD, but just laying it out on a sheet of steel, you'll know the pain of just how big a radius you need to mark out when doing, let's say, typically in the car world, if you're making a conical front end for a transmission tunnel, for your hot rod or whatever, if you're laying that cone out onto, rather than cardboarding it, if you're just laying it out as a cone on a piece of sheet steel, the radius you need to mark that out is enormous, and you won't be able to do it with a pair of compasses or anything. And I mean, I've done it before with wire, and I've actually even got a large old sash clamp that I've put carbide points onto to use as a great big great big trammel. But these are brilliant. You do any radius up to 2,900 millimetres with one of these, so it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, absolutely top piece of kit, really well made. I can't remember what they cost, they're not that expensive. So yeah, Hultafors Talmeter tape measure, that's what all the guys in here use, and it's the best way of measuring anything like this. If I want to measure the width of that chassis across the inside there, literally put the back extension out like that in there, and I'm going to be well within a millimetre of accuracy. You know, I'll be sub a millimetre in terms of accuracy and repeatability every time on that. I'll just do that every time, get exactly the same number, no variation, no doubt, no question. It's all right every time. So that's enough on that. Really good progress on this. Customer visited on, what's Thursday today? Yesterday, Wednesday. The customer for this car visited. He's very pleased. Great to see it moving forward. We're waiting a few things now though, as I say. Mac Industries are doing all the laser cutting. They have finished the laser cutting. I've literally just a few minutes ago missed a call from Hugh at Mac Industries, hopefully to tell me it's all done. Maybe there's a problem, I don't know. I'm going to call him back and find out, but hopefully it's all done. Certainly all the cutting was done. I know they were doing some folding, so there may have been a problem there, I don't know. I'll call them and find out. But hopefully all the parts should then be on a pallet and probably with us tomorrow, all being well. We're also waiting on Phil at Billy's Speed Shop with an LT1 engine and a Tremec T56 Magnum transmission, the latest generation one, which are the engine and transmission that's going into this, along with clutch, flywheel, and all the other myriad of bits to enable us to put that in. So once we've got all the laser cut parts and the engine and transmission, we've already got the differential. I'm awaiting some bushes for the differential coming via Rock Auto from the States. At that point, we'll pretty much have everything apart from one wishbone. I think we've got pretty much all the bits to get this rolling, which would be quite nice. We don't have dampers at the moment. That would be, that's slightly further down the line. We want to get the suspension on and do some final measuring up in terms of dampers. We will be speaking to Ben at Race Shocks about that, because the plan is to be using tractive, semi-active dampers on this project. and they will be coming to us via Race Shocks, who will be doing the setup for us on those. So yeah, that's where we're at on that. I'm going to stop waffling on now. I think I've covered everything. Thanks again, Tony, for those rather nice graphics. Really pleased with that. And at that point, I'm going to hand over to Cal in the assembly shop. I'll see you in a week's time.
Thank you very much, Nat. And I'm going to start with this fabulous machine next to me, Project Kuma, which I have been continuing to do some road testing in. Really generally very happy with how it's been performing. One of the things we did this week was gas the aircon on it. And actually that has highlighted probably the only significant issue that we've got to resolve on it, which is that when the engine is at idle, the alternator, although powerful enough to power the electric AC compressor when it's rotating fast enough, it's not rotating fast enough to do that. So it just, the voltage starts to drop when you just sat at idle. Now we've actually got programming in it such that the compressor speed is ramped down if the voltage starts to drop, so that it doesn't, so that the important stuff, the engine basically, is prioritized. But of course, often when you most want the aircon is likely to be when you're stuck in traffic at idle. So we are machining a bigger crank pulley so that we can speed up the alternator, because actually it's well within it's about 1.2 to 1, the ratio at the minute between crank and alternator. The alternator is safe to 18,000 RPM, and these rev to, I think it's 9,250 or 9, I can't remember which we've got the limiter set to. So we could go 2 to 1. I think we're going to go a little bit less than that, but hopefully that will resolve the problem. But other than that, just an incredible thing to drive, like so precise. And I probably, because when you're testing stuff, I'm just full of nerves, listening for noises and things, and you know, focusing on trying to analyse certain things of characteristics of the engine, etc. That sometimes you just forget how awesome the overall experience is. And I get out of this and drive pretty much a new car home, and it's just like so different. It feels like nothing's connected. This is, I know it's ridiculously cliched to say like a go-kart, but it just feels like you move the steering and it's instant. Like there's no flex or, you know, no rubberization in anything. It just feels so precise, and the same goes to all the controls. The power steering is just so nicely weighted in it. The throttle pedal feel is just great, the way we've mapped the fly-by-wire on it. Even the clutch is pretty easy to live with. But yeah, it's just so direct. And then although comparing it to a sort of new car is an unfair comparison, interestingly, one of our customers was over this week and turned up in an Alphaholics Alpha. I think it's one of their GTARs. And it's the first time I've driven one of those, and I drove it down from here to the Den to take him down there to have a look around there. And in all honesty, it only highlighted how good this is to drive. Like they're like worlds apart. This is so precise, and even the power delivery. Although this is a little bit dead, or I've always driven it and thought, oh, it's a little bit dead under sort of 4,500 RPM, and it really comes alive kind of 6 to 9. Like it's a powerhouse compared to that Alpha engine. It's just like, as soon as you hit sort of 6,000 RPM in this, it's just like, it's so good. I can't really understate how much fun it is, how good it sounds. And having something of a similar ilk to compare it to was interesting, because the steering box on the Alpha is atrocious, really. I mean, it's just, it's leagues apart from the feel of something like this, where it's rack and pinion, it's all rose jointed joints to the steering. So although we've got isolation on the rack from an MVH point of view, and isolation on the track rod ends, on one end of the track rod ends, most of it's rose jointed, and the precision feel of the steering, there's literally no comparison. So yeah, I don't know what the moral of that story is, but it was just me basically patting myself on the back, because I spend so much time kind of fretting about minor little issues all the time. Sometimes you're reminded all of a sudden how good the overall package is. Anyway, Interceptor, George has been stripping down the rear axle on that. We saw the beginnings of that last week. He's now done all the final welds, so the lower arms, we needed to weld the trailing arm brackets onto them. There was also, I think it was a brake T-piece bracket Bobby had put on the top, so that's been fully welded on there. And everything's now been stripped apart, so we're essentially ready to get all of the surface finishing processes done on that. So I think the wishbones themselves will be blasted, zinc metal sprayed and powder coated. And then any parts that have got kind of mating faces that need minimal build-up will probably probably be Xylan coated, but we'll go through those on some future episodes when we start building them back together again. I feel like there was something else I was going to mention on this, and I can't for the life of me think what, but if I remember as we carry on, I will say something. And then there is this awesome machine, which at the moment is just in that phase where the interior is coming together quite quickly. Projects always go through these sort of phases of seemingly a lot of hours with not that much visual change whilst you're aligning all your ducts, getting all the processes done, designing things, making things, and then quite quickly the transformational stuff occurs, and that's what's going on in the interior on this at the minute. So we saw most of it going together last week, and then James has been carrying on. He's been doing the dyno liner in here at the minute and starting to work on some of the parts of the other Allegro, and actually on that note I might hand over to him for the first time to show you what he's been up to.
Hi everyone, I'm James. I'm the new trimmer here at Retropower. A little bit about myself. I've been trimming now for 20 years, always at Auto Trim in Leicester. There I've worked on stuff for Matt Armstrong, numerous football teams, yachts, tractors, caravans, you name it, I've pretty much trimmed it. So just want to say a massive thanks to Richard for his handing over. He was superb handing over to me and showing me the ropes here at Retropower and the Den. So yeah, he's been brilliant to me. So good luck with everything he's going on to now. You may have seen in the video as well, I have Ellie here. So she's my machinist, so she'll be coming in a few days a week to machine everything I need. So it's just take the pressure off a little bit, and she's really good. She worked at Ruskin Land Rovers, so she's done design work, trimming, the works basically. So together we should make a pretty good team. And yeah, hope to carry on. So you've probably seen the work I've been doing this week. So we've done the columns for both Allegros in blue and the brown. We've now finished the second steering wheel, so that should be coming over soon. There's the MGF we've just started to take apart. There's a kit coming for that next week, so that'll be fitted next week, fingers crossed. Centre console in the MGB, that's pretty much done, just needs bolting in. And then you join me now in the first Allegro, where I'm currently levelling the floor. So as you can see, there's quite a deep section of this, so we're going to layer it up with Dynamat, and then hopefully the carpet will turn up and we can start carpeting it. So yeah, all good from me.
Thank you very much, James. And actually, I'm literally going to hand straight back to the CAD den, because I'm aware that a load of the other stuff on the interior of this that's in progress, Luke's been heavily involved with this week, so I might as well hand over to the man himself.
Hello viewers, and welcome to another episode in the Caddy Shack. This week has been a really fun week for me, because I've been doing very little CAD and a lot of practical build-up, specifically on the Allegros. So I love CAD, woo! No, I do love CAD, but it's always fun to take a break from doing what you do day in, day out, and actually get to build some stuff onto the car, which, even though it's not final parts by any means, it's all prototypes, still really fun. And I learn a lot as well, because before coming here, I was at university, and surprise, surprise, when you do a automotive related degree at university, you actually never touch a car, which is great. So I learn a lot every single time that I get to install my prototypes. It allows me to kind of figure out mistakes that are made in assembly, which you don't really think of when you haven't worked on cars, like access to bolts, for example, or where on CAD it's like, oh great, you can get your arm up around the back and do up this bolt here, but in real life that's really difficult, and trying to even find the hole, is pretty difficult. So yeah, really fun. So in that process, I've now got the entirety of the passenger lower dash in. Happy, and that can actually be finally made now. That went together super well, really nicely. As well as, you guys saw it last week, but that little box that houses the connectors in it looks really cool, very happy. And then over the last day, I also got the driver side in, like the two parts that sit next to the, sit either side of the steering column, sorry. Slight edits those, we had to raise the floor of that a bit because it was impeding, well not really impeding, but it would have been a bit awkward getting into the car and getting your foot to the pedal and everything. So minor edits there, that's now in the car. All I've got left to do on that lower dash now is to sort the bracing for the driver side, and then we're all good to go, which is super exciting. Also on the Allegro, we were leaving the rear quarter card kind of 3D section till when we had the rear seats in and the court cards done. That is now done. The rear seats are in. They look awesome. R.I.P. Richard, but he did such a good job on them. And I was able to get a quick scan of that and do the design for the rear quarter cards, and I just need Cal to double check that, and then I can start manufacturing that, and then that is literally the last few bits for the interior done. And then, other than that, we had a really Willy on block job yesterday of marking out the cut holes in the rear of the E-Type to then cut the holes for the rear lights, and this is obviously incredibly scary because the metalwork on that rear end is extensive to say the least, and it looks fantastic. So any idea of cutting into that rear end, and even worse than that, cutting into it wrong, is absolutely terrifying. But with many a laser, many a spirit level, and a cutting guide tool, we have marked out those holes, and I think Matt is literally currently in the process of cutting them out now. Terrifying. But when they're in, they're going to look great, and again, I can't wait to see that all go together. Other than that, really little small bits. We've got the prototype here for the linear actuator on the flip up number plate. Well, some of the prototype, I'm just waiting on the rest of the components to come in. Really happy. It looks really fancy and overkill, even though you're never actually going to see it in the car, but I know it's like that, so I'm really happy. But
and it is actually really simple.
It is really simple, yeah. Other than that, loads of little small bits. The indicator vents for the Allegros, they have a final prototype now, so I'm just about to go try that in the car. And some of the stuff that I'm probably forgetting, but we'll mention in next week's video. Thank you very much, guys.
Hello viewers, welcome to Strippers and Blackjack at Retropower. What was I even talking about? AC stuff. Yeah, whenever. Hey dudes. So, okay, hello. Welcome to the other half of the CAD Cave. No, not the CAD Cave. What are we on this week?
Caddy Shack.
Caddy Shack. So, this week I'm going to go through a version 1 finished AC system, which has taken a bloody long time, and I am sick of seeing, and I'm sure everyone, well, all of you guys are as well. So, yeah, we're version 1 finished. I say version 1, there's been already quite a lot of iterations and changes, this being one of them, which I might as well start with. So, this is the half and half existing AC unit, which has got some of the AC parts, the blower on it and everything. And it started off with like this block. The fan was bolted directly to where this 3D print's bolted to. This piece was bolted on here, and we've, through different versions, ended up where we are now. So this is meant to be mounted this way, with all the drains, sorry, this way, with the drains coming out the bottom, because astute people will know that AC systems drip a lot. So now we're turning it 90 degrees, we had to move all the drips, where all the drips are going to come from. There's been some people in the comments which have mentioned this, so I thought I'd use this opportunity to explain it now. Effectively, we've got all of this now coming out of the adapter. So with inside of this, it's got like a double lip, which I'll do a bit of B-roll for Jamie to show, but it's got a double lip with inside. So all the moisture, in theory, we've obviously got to do some testing on this, but in theory will come down the outside and actually run with inside this spacer, not end up in the fan. There is the chance that it will come down, if we have any drips directly down the middle, it will fall into the fan, but the hope is, because we've got the actual motor part of it is here, and it'll obviously accumulate here, we're going to put another drain, one of these little bad boys, in the side, so any small bits of residue that ends up in the fan will just kind of drip out the bottom, and it won't actually do any damage to anything. And in theory, most of it's going to be captured by this piece. Now I will move to the virtual world. So again, I'll try and get some B-roll for Jamie, so it's a bit more obvious for you guys. But the AC system is, safe to say, a tight fit in this car, which is why it's taken a considerable amount more time than we expected. One of the reasons we had to design the system in this car is because of the intake setup we're going. So you might remember from probably a couple of months ago now, the intakes we designed, which is still work in progress obviously, but we needed to move them because the original system sat like here, which was within the throttle body on the right bank or left bank, depending on where you're looking at it from. So that involved us, redoing the AC system, which the original one wasn't very good anyway, so hopefully this will be a lot more, I don't know, cold, I guess. Right, if I now come into this, I'm trying to do this all on the fly and with a really big file, it's probably going to lag. So if I turn that off, so I'll turn the scan off of the body, turn the intakes off just so it's a bit more obvious. Okay, so this is effectively what we've ended up with. So this piece here, which I've just showed you, is that bit there, and effectively the blower will blow the air through this, which has got, I've forgotten the part, what's the radiator part in an aircon system called? Had a brain lapse. Condenser? We're going with condenser. It is condenser, yeah. So it blows through the condenser, up through the system, and then into this this box here, which is going to have a flap in it, which, again, I'll do some proper B-roll for Jamie so it's a bit more obvious for you guys, but there'll be a flap within this, which can then switch either this way or this way. If the flap flaps this way, it goes straight into this duct and then goes into the actual ducting of the car and gives you cold air. Whereas if we want hot air, what we're doing is we'll switch off the condenser. This flap will flip to this side, which will then run through this unit, which houses, ta-da, our hot air maker, which I forgot what this is called as well. It's effectively a radiator. And that will then give you hot air. And then if we want a kind of a bit of both, so kind of, I don't know, all the just different temperature control things, we can kind of have the flap half open, quarter open. All that calibration will need to be figured out later down the road. But making all this fit has been interesting, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because you'll all die of boredom. But long story short, it all goes together in quite a linear way. So one piece after another, and it's all bolting together. Again, I'll try and get some nice B-reel for Jamie to kind of splice in to kind of make it a lot nicer to look at for you guys. But yeah, this is what we've ended up with. There's going to be a lot of prototyping over the next weeks or so, and then hopefully it will all kind of go together. We've already had to do a couple of modifications to it, involving moving the fan and bits and bobs, because like I said, packaging in this car has been an absolute nightmare. But yeah, I'm going to stop waffling now and pass back to Cal. Thank you.
Thank you, CAD Den. And yeah, suffice to say, my excitement about the coming weeks and the transformation of this car is very high. Moving on, Project Churchill. Luke will probably have just mentioned, may not have done, that he is prototyping the upper parts of the door card. So we've done all the door card design, we've cut the base panels, we've just got to do the three-dimensional parts, which are 3D prints. But he wanted to, before we jump in and do the final carbon nylon prints, he wanted to just prototype the upper part, because it kind of hooks over, it has to sit right with the glass sort of waste seal, has to hook over and actually mount the top of the card there as well, and it's got some intricate profiles where it kicks down the back end of the door and meets up with the pillars. He wants to just prototype all that and make sure it sits perfect. So those bits have just been pulled the trigger in terms of printing. We'll get them trialled. If there's no changes, crack on and print the final 3D bits, and with the view really to James, as soon as he's finished the carpet on the Allegros, being able to jump onto this and starting the sculpture of the back seat, which will be certainly be a test of the man, because that's just from scratch design a back seat. We've obviously got a vision for how we want it to look, but yes, it has to be completely made from scratch. So starting with that, he'll also do the parcel shelf. We've already done the rear quarter cards, and then we'll move on to doing the door cards. So I'm just trying to stay a couple of steps ahead of him in terms of the manufacturing of the parts. And then we've got a headlining challenge coming on this one as well, but we'll reveal that when we actually get onto it. So that's where we're at on that. And then Camaro. So it's been long overdue getting back onto this. And really pushing it through to the road testing stage. And one of the things that we've known we were going to need to tackle as soon as we get back onto it is we discovered a bit of an issue with the steering, in that it was kind of going tight and loose when you turned it, which had all the hallmarks of an issue with the UJ. Which it definitely is. Now we've got a really good solution now. We're going to re-angle the rack slightly. Essentially, for whatever reason, and we don't really know why, because all of the steering column, joints, crossmember, rack, etc. was all part of a kit. But the lower UJ is going through quite a tight angle, and it's basically causing a problem, especially exacerbated by the fact that the upper UJ is not through quite such a tight angle. And it's an interesting one, because when we were looking at this, it reminded me of some of the characteristics of universal joints, which you might normally, this is going to be like a gnat tangent, you might not normally think of this, but When you have a universal joint, when it's straight, obviously everything rotates at the same speed. But actually, and this might be not what you think, when you start to angle the joint, when you turn one side of it at a constant speed, the other side actually speeds up and slows down slightly. It's quite hard to envisage the reason for this, but essentially that little spider, that little cross in the middle of the UJ is rocking back and forth versus one side as it rotates. And that arc that it passes through as it rocks one way and the other actually adds to and detracts from the speed of the output shaft as you turn. So when you start to get a really tight angle on a UJ, it's quite notable that the output shaft versus a constant input speeds up and slows down quite drastically, which is why in a car you don't really want the drive shaft, prop shaft, to be through a steep angle, because it's basically speeding up and slowing down all the time. You set up all sorts of horrible vibrations. And that's when people talk about UJ phasing, it tends to be to make sure that the speed up and slow down is the same on both joints. So, because if you don't have it, if you have them out of phase, basically one's trying to speed up while the other one's trying to slow down, and it means that essentially you're trying to twist the downlink. But yes, the long story short on this is that the lower UJ was through too steep an angle, the upper one through a much less steep angle, and that was creating this issue whereby the steering felt kind of light and loose and tight, which we hadn't noticed on it until everything was finally tightened up and we actually tried it on the floor for the first time, and then we noticed it. But yeah, we've come up with a solution. We're basically modifying this steering rack mount to angle the rack slightly further back, keep it on exactly the same axis, but angle it back so that the lower UJ is through more or less exactly the same angle as the upper, and the angle of it is slightly less. So hopefully George will have absolutely nailed that, and it'll be absolute, just like that, it'll be sweet as a nut. So that should be next week, and I then think there is not a lot. We've got to do the bonnet pins, and I need to do the PDM programming on it. And I think at that point we may be ready for road testing. So watch this space on that. And I think on that note, I'm going to hand over to Nick to see what's going on down the den.
Hello and welcome to the den. Thank you, Cal. So we'll start with the Lupo this week. So loads of work going on the Lupo. Touched on this last week with the clutch. So we managed to get the clutch master cylinder because it had a bit of a kind of hodgepodge of bits with the engine conversion, and we actually found the angle on the rod on the master cylinder was way too acute and it was rubbing, which is partly why the pedal was so bad. So we've gone up a size on the diameter to get a bit more movement on the actual clutch. And then Nat is fabricating a new bracket just to put a bit of an angle on the cylinder, just to take a bit of angle out of the rod. So that's going to alleviate that. The brake lines on the back were rotten. They're kind of a funny two-piece flexible thing. Because of the master cylinder issue, we've got to change the pipes that run across the bulkhead. So chatting with the customer, what we're going to do is basically convert the whole car to flexible, new flexi lines, which will basically just alleviate all those problems in one hit. All nice and new, nice and safe and fresh, which will suit the car a lot better. Customers requested we just give the engine a bit of attention, so we're going to change the oil pump and the sump gasket. We'll just have a look at the pickup, just do some checks in there while we're in there. Gearbox is back on. The clutch slave, we've got a new slave cylinder, so that's all back together. We're getting a new radiator, which is going to be a thicker core aluminium radiator that will fit into the original cowling. And we're going through some of the coolant pipes and the boost pipes at the moment because some of them were a bit old and a bit nasty, so we're going to change some of those for future reliability. We've done a few service items that the customer requested, so ball joints, brakes. We're doing the front brake lines, the braided hoses, because they were a bit of an old sort of not ideal setup on those. We'll be doing those as well. So yeah, quite involved, but getting there, and it's going to be absolutely spot on when it's all done, which is exciting. So in the detailing bay, we have got a pretty much now ready to be handed over MGB. The customer has bought new wheels for it and new tyres, so he's going to have two sets, one for road, one for track. So got these 2-piece, I think, or 3-piece wheels in that kind of cool grey with the chrome outer and some Bridgestones. So they're on there, they look really good. Chris is giving the hood a quick coat. Going to give it a quick tidy up, get all our mucky fingerprints off and so on and so forth. And I understand, I think James will have talked to you guys, or will be talking to you guys about the interior, which looks amazing. Really, really like the interior on that. So we've been out road testing with the Tremec gearbox. Drives really, really well. And I'll be honest, I was slightly cynical with the Tremec box. Don't know if I should say this because it was American. Anyway, it's amazing. It is so, so good. Really smooth, really slick, really lovely shift. So overall, it's just amazing to drive. Such a good thing. So yeah, I have no doubt the customer's going to be very pleased with that, and he's going to be picking that up in a couple of days' time. So very much looking forward to him being able to have that back. I'm going to quickly scoot around here. So we've got the Saab on the ramp at the moment. This is the Saab 9.5 Aero Hot, which has been sort of tuned. It's got LSD and stuff in it. So that's just up on the ramp for us to have a quick look over at the moment. And then we can liaise with the customer what we're going to do, because we may or may not be doing anything. We're not sure. We're sort of deciding, which is part of what we do. Quattro has been having loads of time on it. So engine and gearbox, the new 6-speed gearbox, are back in it. So that's just getting plumbed back up, tidying up bits and bobs as we go, which is excellent. No real progress over here. Callum's E30, which is kind of part of the furniture now. Apparently this is going out this week, and it's Thursday, so if that goes out, then I'm the queen. And apparently he's driving it to Poland in a couple of weeks. So Cal, pull your finger out, mate. Evo, on the other hand, now does run and drive, and is just waiting for a couple of fluid changes, and then that'll be back on the road. So right in the middle, we've got the Golf Mark III Golf VR6. Mega low mileage car, 44,000 miles. Absolutely love this thing. It has been detailed previously. It looks so good. The wheels are just perfect, period, kind of look 90s wheels. We've done a few nice little tidying up jobs. As you'd have seen previously, we've had all the interior out, so the customer supplied some OE Recaro seats. We've had the interior out to soundproof and sound deaden. We've done the audio install, and we've had a bit of a play around and done a bit of a kind of a bespoke intake around the factory system. As a package, it works really, really well. It's so quiet, the audio is amazing, and you get a really good induction noise while still having a cold air feed, rather than it just being an open cone filter in the engine bay. We've also trimmed the front arches on the inside slightly, just because those wheels where the car's lowered on the KWs was just catching on lock. So we've been able to remedy that so that it doesn't catch anymore. So customer's super excited, been in touch with him, chatted to him a couple of days ago, and he's really looking forward to getting it back. We may be doing some more work in the future with the interior, so everything from the sort of the glass upwards is basically like a beigey kind of sand colour. The headlining's starting to drop a bit, so he wanted us to attend to the headlining, which we can do. But it's a question now of whether we're going to stick with that sand colour, or ideally he wants everything to go to that black to match the rest of the interior, which kind of adds a bit of modernity to the car, we think, as well. So that's a bit of question up in the air at the moment, whether we do that now, whether that'll be a future visit. So yeah, really pleased. This car has got a lot of attention while it's been here, actually, and rightly so, because it's a lovely, lovely thing, and it's been a pleasure to have it here. So that's it for me. There's not really a lot else to talk about in any other cars. We've kind of been busy beavering away with sort of some boring bits as well in the background. So that's going to be it for me. Have a lovely week. See you next time.